All right, I want to welcome to the stage my dear friends. So Rahila from Consensus is joining us. So Rahila, march up to the stage. We also have Tracy Chadwell, who's a founding partner at 1843 Capital. So Tracy, here's a seat for you. And then Rosanna is running a bit late. She is solving the world's problems. So whenever she finds us, we'll have her hop up here with us. Oh, all right, here you are. So we saved this seat for you. No worries. All right, so the title of this talk is a fun one, Building a Technology of Inclusion. So number one, you can probably notice that all of the people on this stage are women, so yes, it's amazing. But I think more importantly, one of the discussions we were having as we were sort of throwing around ideas for this panel is, what does inclusion really mean? When we talk about inclusion, does it mean inclusion in early technology movements, in new startups? Does it mean social inclusion? Does it mean economic and financial inclusion? Or does it mean political inclusion? And I think as we look at the potential of blockchain technology, digital currencies, all of these different forms of inclusion are really relevant to the dialogue. So today we're going to be talking about a lot of different ways to conceptualize inclusion, but I want to start with the one that's closest to my heart personally, which is economic and financial inclusion. So I would love to start with Rahila. So you're working in the Middle East. You've had a lot of experience working with women, with communities across the world. How do you really think about the impact that digital currencies like Ethereum, like Bitcoin, others that are now emerging, what impact that will have on financial inclusion around the world? And what role do you think organizations like Consensus, venture funds will play in helping that wave of financial inclusion?
Well, I can answer this a little bit differently. The whole reason why I even got into blockchain was I was really intrigued by how it was impacting and the potential opportunity that it could provide women around the world, whether it was somebody in the US or somebody in Afghanistan or somebody in the Middle East. So I was writing a book called The Internet of Women that Cisco was funding, and a lot of people within Cisco were doing very interesting things on the blockchain that wasn't public, and they were super excited about it. So it's just kind of like, wow, blockchain is something that we're gonna keep hearing about. And then, as I mentioned earlier when I spoke, I would visit the Dubai government and they would talk about how blockchain would be one of the technologies they want to accelerate. So I was just kind of like, wow, this is a real thing. Congratulations to all the Bitcoin, Ether people, you know? And then what really kind of got me interested in the space in terms of joining it and really deep diving into it was when I heard about a young Afghan woman named Farashta that created an organization called Code to Inspire, which is the first coding school for young women in Afghanistan. And there's a couple of people from Consensus that are on her board. And I really wanted to tell her story in the book, and I had heard about how she was one of the first people, I think the first person in Afghanistan, along with someone else, that was experimenting with Bitcoin in Afghanistan. And I had spent 3 years living in Afghanistan in my mid-20s. So I was like, wow, this is a technology that can help the developed world, but also the developing world. And that's how I ended up getting into the space. And then there's certain initiatives from the very top, like Google for Entrepreneurs has 40 Forward, for example. And they worked with a lot of different organizations from all around the world to help get more women in startup spaces, whether it was incubators or funds, and one of the organizations was Gaza Sky Geeks, and I had the opportunity to visit Gaza, and I was really fascinated that thanks to some of the efforts from the 40 Forward program, like over half the women part of Gaza Sky Geeks, like the first startup accelerator in Gaza that Google helped fund, were women. And then there was a German entrepreneur named Zoe that just started an ICO fund, I think today, called a new fund that came up on my Facebook feed. She was there visiting there periodically doing cryptocurrency classes. And in a place like Gaza that PayPal isn't allowed, you could just imagine how valuable cryptocurrency education is. So I think from that aspect, that's something that makes me very excited, and it's really a technology that is inclusive to a lot of people, whether they're users or in terms of providing job opportunities.
Great. Yeah, I think Code to Inspire is a really amazing program, and we've worked with that team to also get our portfolio companies at DCG to give the women projects to work on, because giving women opportunity to earn financial independence is really amazing. So I would encourage everyone to support that organization, see how you can get involved. So let's go maybe a stage back to the capital formation process. So just today, there was a really interesting article that came out in Harvard Business Review, which was a study of how VCs reacted to pitches, whether they were from male founders or female founders. And what was really interesting about the study is it revealed this continued kind of pervasive bias that VCs have. And I think there's sort of this unstated undertone throughout the capital formation cycle, where female founders just have a harder time raising money. There are very, very few women in VCs. Typically, they're also at the associate level, not at the partner level, where they're able to make decisions around hiring and investing. So Tracy, you're in the process of starting a fund. How do you sort of think about your role as a woman looking at opportunities? How do you really think the VC ecosystem needs to change to also create opportunities for inclusion at the startup and funding level?
You know, it's amazing that now we only have 3% of the venture capitalists are women.
We went down.
We actually went down. I became a partner of a VC fund in 1999 originally, and at that point there were 7%. But now we stand at 3%. And I also thought we were doing better in terms of funding female founders, but we have actually gone down this year. In 2016, we were at 2.19% of total venture capital dollars went to female founders. This is despite the fact that they have founded 20% of the total startups. So it really is a problem inherently that needs to be solved, but I think that a lot of what has happened in the past, it hasn't been something nefarious. I don't think anybody's going out there and saying, I am definitely not funding a woman. You know, I think what it is that there's existing networks in place, but also there is some latent unconscious bias. I have unconscious bias. Sometimes a female founder will walk in the room and I am floored by what she has built. I can't believe it. So, you know, this has been proven time over time. There was a study that they did at MIT that said that if a man and a woman gave identical pitches, the woman was 40% less likely to get funded. So that kind of throws out the argument that, oh, well, women aren't building interesting things. So, but I really encourage women, too, to be in the blockchain space. I think it's sort of an inherently feminine, community-driven type of technology, and I think it's a great place for them to be.
Yeah, absolutely. We did an interesting analysis last year. At that time, we had invested in 70 companies, and I looked at across those 70 how many women were in different roles. And we found one interesting fact was across those 70 companies with around 1,200 employees altogether, around 17% were women, which is actually the average for tech. So I thought that was really encouraging. But the one really interesting trend was all of the companies that had less than 10 employees, meaning they were still fairly early stage, they were also the companies that had 0 women involved. So that was really
That's
fascinating,
interesting.
right? Really fascinating. And some of what we always talk about is, well, what's the structural issue? So for example, more women with STEM degrees, that's not something I can change overnight, right? That's more of a structural issue.
And those numbers are going down.
So we need more programs like Code to Inspire.
In the United States, they're going down, not globally. Well, not in other parts of the world.
But then there are other challenges which you point out around perception, around sort of getting women involved at different levels of the organization, which we can resolve. So I think it'll be interesting to see what ideas people come up with. I guess the challenge to the crowd would be, how do we all get more women, not just women, but I would say people from different backgrounds, people from different countries, people with different experiences involved in building all of the amazing things we're building. Do you have any things you've seen from your venture background?
Well, also, too, it's not for a lack of companies there are terrific, really interesting technology companies out there being built by women and by people of color. So it's not like we have a lack of them. I think what we have is a lack of attention, a lack of the numbers of people to actually look at them, and a lack of the dollars to fund them. So that's really where the problem is.
Got it. Let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about political inclusion. So right now in our country, it's politically a turbulent time, if that's something I can say here. Around the world, I think increasingly people are very sensitive to the role that governments play when it comes to human rights, censorship, access to information. I myself am from Turkey. Turkey is not a country at the moment that is known for civil liberties. But we saw a great thing happen last week where Turkish Wikipedia was taken offline. One of our companies, IPFS, which is a distributed file storage protocol, actually took Turkish Wikipedia and put it on IPFS, meaning it can't be taken down or censored because it's not a centralized sort of location that a government can force to go down. So to you, Rosanna, the question would be, as you look at your role at the World Bank, as you think about opportunities to leverage blockchain technology, how do you think blockchain technology is influencing the political climate? How is it sort of influencing the role that you see the World Bank playing in sort of enabling fairness, censorship resistance, and I guess rights for private citizens?
Yeah, no, I think that that's a really great question because I think the biggest impact in terms of the developing world is particularly in those crisis moments. You know, when the whole government collapses or when, you know, an earthquake strikes.
Hold it closer to your mouth. Do you want mine?
Sorry, I was in the other one and I like basically yelled out, and so that's why, yeah, anyway.
I think she's just testing to make sure you're listening.
Testing, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, is this better now? Should I start again? All right. All right, so that's a great question, Melda.
Thank you.
In that, I don't know, I'm quite scared about what's really happening around the world. I mean, Turkey really frightens me. That's really, and, you know, the Brexit, United States. But getting back to the point is that I think that blockchain has enormous potential, particularly for vulnerable areas, not just in terms of political, but also like earthquakes and crisis and, you know, tsunamis, when whole systems can go down. Like, this is when, like, what's the backup, right? And so, like, I think that in that sense, having a safety net would enormously have a tremendous impact on human welfare and livelihood, not just ID, but we're talking about people's lives and assets and ability to, you know, set up home somewhere else because they've been displaced. So in that sense, I think, yeah, we're very much, the World Bank Blockchain Working Group is relatively new. It's been wonderful working with Rahila and Melton. I see these ladies around because I by no means am an expert in blockchain, but I do see, and me and myself and amongst other enthusiasts in the World Bank think that this is a technology we definitely could help leapfrog institutions that may not even have developed yet in some developing countries. And so we are cautiously approaching it like a giant elephant because we're very big, and we are gathering together across the different sectors, and we're not particularly looking at finance or economics, but also in terms of like education and value chain tracking, and also even internally we're thinking that, because like the World Bank's major job is to dispense loans, and so whether or not we can use that to track where the money is going on a blockchain is something that we're really excited to test out and see. And so whilst we're not at any point, we're not at a stage to advocate that to our country clients in the sense that we need to try and fully understand it as an institution, as well as play with it and, like, you know, see how we incorporate it in ways before we would advocate it for our country clients. And so, but we also would like to perform an advisory role to be a nonpartisan global partner in this, and that, like, there's a lot of dynamic global players. I don't think anybody's like narrowing themselves to one country anymore, right, in your terms of business. And so I think that it would be nice to be a facilitator of like all the different innovations and connecting these opportunities and technology for developing country clients. And I think Rahila has been doing a lot of really great work in Dubai. Maybe you can know a little bit about that. But
Well, we're going to get back to Dubai in a moment.
but I guess like getting back to the question, yes, I think that there is so, like you think that this technology is going to be really great for us in the developed world. Imagine what it can do for the developing world, right? Like, I would make the analogy of like when Uber came out to the United States, it was so cool and everybody's like, okay, like using Uber, but we also had taxis and we also had all this other stuff. But when I lived in India for 2 years, and I had friends who were in Mumbai who got Uber, and then suddenly they were like, this is amazing. Like, you don't understand, because like taxi drivers in India, if any of you have been out there, it's like dodgy as, right? Like they'll take you to places you don't want to go. They'll charge you whatever they feel like charging, and like they'll always hustle. And so you imagine like you suddenly have Uber and you can track everything. It's all paid and it's all transparent. Like for them, it's like the delta is enormous. And so if you think this is disruptive now, think about how disruptive for like billions of people around the world.
So we have to build all the infrastructure to get it there. One of the interesting dialogues that I think we often have is all of the things that we're building, at their core, it's technology, right? Many of us are technologists, but at the same time, there's a very important social aspect to how these technologies get built. I always think of really using science and technology for social good, but as we've seen throughout human history, there's always the potential for technology to be also used in a way that is not positive. So I want to touch briefly on the role that institutions and governments play. So the example I just gave of IPFS sort of going in and making information that a government doesn't want online readily available, there may be some governments around the world who find this not so appealing, who may find this threatening. So as, I guess, Rahila, to you, as you're working with governments, particularly a government like Dubai that is trying to modernize and sort of change its processes, how do you sort of think about approaching that very human dialogue around what technology enables, while also sort of working within the confines of where governments and regulators would like to maintain certain power structures, certain levels of control? Do you think there is a tension there? Do you think it's one that will be resolved over time? And what role, I guess, do you see yourself playing as an educator, an advocate, an advisor?
Well, I think this is another example of how a lot of change, whether it's social change or technological advancement, really comes, when it comes from the top, it has a huge impact. So the fact that Sheikh Mohammed, the ruler of Dubai, issued a mandate and all these government entities are taking it seriously, I haven't experienced that tension at all. And I think, if anything, and I kind of like Dubai's approach because it's very human and very holistic, that how can we make, Dubai's aiming to be the happiest city in the world, and they want to experiment, they want to use artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and blockchain to enable this. I mean, just helping in a tool to help like achieve that sort of goal, whether you're a tourist visiting Dubai or you're a local Emirati person or you're an expat that's moving to Dubai. So it's actually really fascinating because we're working with, whether it's the land department or the health department or education, you're really looking at pain points that citizens experience and pain points that these entities experience, and you're helping them develop use cases that if you're a blockchain company, you'll get to bid on. It's pretty soon in the coming months because a bunch of things will be coming out.
Great. Let's take that to a slightly different angle. I always like to stir the pot a little bit. So one of the great things about digital currencies, about blockchain technology, is that they are enabling commercial activity in gray markets, dark markets. There is like the normal internet, the normal economic activity we have, and then there's this whole strata below that of various levels of, I guess, questionable activity. And I think this is kind of an interesting tension definitely in the Bitcoin community and in some other digital currency communities, where there are individuals transacting in ways that maybe lawyers wouldn't agree with, regulators wouldn't agree with, but it's creating inclusion for a community that has a use for this technology. So Tracy, from an investor's perspective, as you look at the opportunity to invest in technology, how do you sort of grapple with that tension of, hey, this is not just a technology that could be used to send money from one country to another, but it's potentially technology that could be used in some ways, especially if it's fully decentralized, fully distributed, as kind of the intent of much of this was originally, that could be used for things that are sort of outside the areas that the law finds, I guess, appropriate. How do you sort of think about that tension as an investor, and how do you work that into the way you look at the new companies that are emerging?
So just to clarify, did you mean that murderers and blackmailers are a community?
But this is an interesting tension, right? People are using this technology. Does that make the technology bad? I don't think so. But if the goal is to create a truly decentralized, uncensored financial system, you're also introducing a lot of that gray area, right? And this is something I struggle with constantly, but I'd be curious to hear how you think about it.
That's going to exist any place there's opportunity. And what I like to do is just really focus on the positive aspects and really see where truly can be helpful to people and truly can generate a lot of revenue and make a company that's ultimately saleable. So, look at things like what BitPesa is doing and actually creating livelihoods for people and giving them a much stronger stance in life when they're trying to build businesses in a place like Africa. So for those of you who don't know, BitPesa is a financial exchange company that it's a female founder, absolutely, that allows you to take payments in other countries without currency exchange issues and charges.
Yeah, so as you look at companies that are doing social good, how do you weigh sort of financial return versus social impact? Is that something you look at in your investment thesis, or?
It's 100% financial impact. It's not social impact. By the nature of it, when I have a female founder in place, they're usually doing something that is good for the world, but it's because I am a fiduciary, it's all about financial return.
Got it. Do you find that trend, though, that women tend to have a social element or community element to their business typically?
I think it's a global trend. I don't think that it's just women. I think that most people out there are trying to build something that really does something better for the world or creates a better marketplace or a better way of doing things things are more efficient. But at least all the female founders I've seen definitely are heavy in that space.
Got it. So let's switch gears again. So we covered economic and financial. We covered political a little bit. Let's go to social inclusion, which I think we touched on a bit. But I'll just add, I'm amazed to see every blockchain, Bitcoin event I've been to over the last 3-4 years, always such a different crowd. Can you just say the diversity is amazing, the areas that people are from. So Rosanna, back to you. At the World Bank, as you sort of identify partners you want to work with, as you look at areas of the world, are you seeing different social communities that you're trying to engage with? How do you think about getting sort of those different perspectives involved so those different social lenses are reflected in your work? And is that something the blockchain working group's looking at?
That's a very good question, Malcolm. Well, I think that the World Bank, the way that we've always approached development projects is to incorporate stakeholder interviews. In some ways, even before design thinking was becoming a fad, it was very much and it's probably because they stuffed up a lot of times, right? They build a dam and then they displace people and then we're like, oh, should have asked them. And so they actually put in a very rigorous, it's true, very rigorous way of ensuring that if they displace people and all this stuff. So every single World Bank project requires this kind of due diligence of all the societies being asked. And there's a huge gender vein running through this an environment, and so you have to always tick this box because we're a bureaucracy of whether or not it's gender informed. In what way would this project benefit women and the minorities, and also an environment one where whether or not this would touch on sustainable green or would it cut down trees. And I think that's actually
Save the trees.
Save the trees. I think that this is a really interesting point because as this ecosystem moves along, I think that these values are actually very important to instill on building like the moving forward in terms of the blockchain, in that, you know, at the end of it, it's about a global togetherness. To be able, I mean, the blockchain enables us to be a global community, and therefore, I actually would like to see the space kind of take on like a sense of, you know, due diligence, or call it like a code of ethics or some sort of like do no
Code of
evil.
ethics? What?
Or like, you know,
I'm
just
joking.
be a good bloke, you know, don't try to like, you know, I mean, there's so much business opportunities. It's true, like people are going to be making lots and lots of money, but I think on the other side of it, it's like, you know, compete on the right things, compete on giving a better product, compete on a, you know, better value proposition.
Are those standards something that the World Bank would maybe see itself creating as you look at projects?
I would love for the World Bank to see
There we
this,
go.
but I also
World
would
Bank
like
will
to
create some standards.
No, I would like to do a shout out to the World Economic Forum. They're actually stepping up their blockchain activities.
We are.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good work happening.
They're actually trying to appoint a director of blockchain in the San Francisco office, and so I think that would be something that could be a really great opportunity to perhaps like foster like a global public good NGO thing for the blockchain space. You know, to be like do no evil, don't fuck over your competitor. Sorry, I said that. But yeah.
All right,
It's
so
like-
we've got just a few minutes left since we are at Ethereal, and this is all about reimagining the future of our world using this amazing technology that we're all participating in various ways. I like to do predictions. I know it's cheesy, but I think it's kind of fun to hear how each of you sort of think through the future. So maybe each of you could share sort of one way you think blockchain technology can enable a type of inclusion you're excited about. So, Rahila, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, since we're from the education standpoint, what I found most interesting about Dubai was starting in the 90s when they created Internet City. They also made sure that they had high quality institutions like the higher colleges of technology in the UAE that was providing high quality technical education. And they really encouraged women to not only take courses, but ensure that there were jobs for people who graduated. So I'm super excited that Consensus recently launched an academy, which is an online course, and I hope that, you know, especially there are so many women in the blockchain space, that we can do our part to inspire and excite a lot of young women to get into blockchain and learn to code.
Fantastic. Tracy, how about you?
It's not about inclusion, but I'm really waiting for when I sell a stock, I don't have to wait for 3 days for it to clear to get the cash into my account. So that to me is incredibly exciting. But I'm also excited about security for people and identity, and I'm really excited to see what the future holds in terms of people having a sort of a global identity on the blockchain.
One quick detour, since we've talked about ICOs a lot today. How do you conceptualize sort of the ICO trend and the way that might impact portfolio management for VC? Not really relevant yet.
It's not something I pay a lot of attention to.
All right, good to know. And then, Rosanna, from your perspective, particularly thinking about sort of your role at the World Bank, what is one sort of use of blockchain for inclusion that you think would be exciting to see? What are you thinking about for the future?
Well, I think the entire thing is really exciting, right? Like the very fact that our mission is to alleviate poverty, right? Where our mission is to bring down global inequality. And now we have technology that could potentially address that in a faster, more efficient way. That is inclusion, right?
At all levels, absolutely. So with that said, I want to thank all my amazing panelists and thank everyone for being here today. If anyone has ideas for inclusion, I know at Consensus next week there will be 2 women's lunches to talk about the gender inclusion aspect. So if any of you have thoughts, have ideas on how we can bring more women into the space, I know a lot of us will be there talking about that. And I guess we'll look forward to the World Bank rolling out an ethics standard, maybe, with the WEF.
Do no evil.
Do no evil. Yeah, maybe that's the theme. So thanks again, and hope everyone has a fun week and weekend.